we are ready to continue our work on the email signing form. And the next thing that we want to do is to add form validation. And what do I mean by that? Well, at the moment, our signing button is always enabled, and this means that we could add the email and password fields empty and try to submit our form. And I think we can do better than that. So I'm going to suggest that we add some code to validate the email and password fields so that our submit button becomes enabled only when we pass validation. So this is what we want to accomplish. We want our submit button to be enabled only when both the email and the password fields are valid. And just to show you a quick way of doing this, I'm going to find the build children method that we have over here, and this is where we create our form submit button, and this is what we're going to do. Over here, I'm going to add a boolean variable called submit enable, and I'm going to say that this is true if email dot is not empty, and also password dot is not empty. And just as a reminder, the email and password fields actually come from our password and email controllers up here. Okay, once I had this check in here, I can go to the onPressed callback of the form submit method, and I can say that if the submit button is enabled, then I can call the submit method. Otherwise, I'm going to pass in a value of null. So I can hot reload. And as you can see, the button is now disabled. And this is because we are passing null to the callback of our button. Okay, so over here, I could now type in an email like this, and then move to the password field. And what I would expect at this stage is that as soon as I type in the first character, then the submit button becomes enabled, right? So I can type one character, but I can see that the button remains disabled. So what is going on over here? The reason why the button does not become enabled is that our email and password are now not empty. However, we are not rebuilding our form when they change. So what we want to do is to make sure that every time the email and password change, then our form is rebuilt. And we can rebuild our form by calling setState. Okay, so the way we're going to fix this is by using a new callback in our text field. So I can move down to my build email text field over here. And here I can add a new callback, which is called onChanged. This takes one parameter, which is a string, and that is the value of our text field. So in this case, it would be the email. And then I need to call a method. So what I'm going to do is to create a new method, which is going to be called update state. And this method doesn't exist yet, so I'm actually going to create it as a method. And inside this method implementation, I can call setState, like this. Now, one thing that I want to point out is that when we call setState, we also update the value of some mutable state variable. However, in this case, we don't need to do that because the updated email and password values are accessible by our email and password controllers. In other words, what we're going to do here is to just call setState in order to rebuild our form, but we are not going to manually update anything. Okay, so we now have this update state method, and what I'm going to do is to also make sure that I call it from the password text field. So in here I can also add an onChanged callback, which now takes a password parameter, and I'm going to call update state. And notice how I'm actually not passing the password or email parameters to our update state method, because this method, once again, doesn't need to do anything. So let's just see how this works. And we want to verify that this method is called and we can get the updated email and password fields. So to do that, I can just add a print statement, and here I could say email is, and then $_email, and then I could use password is $_password, like this. And if I hot reload now, I could pop up my console and I can see that every time I change the values, the console log updates. And what you can also see is that if I delete all the characters from the password text field, including the last one, then my signing button becomes disabled. Okay, so our basic validation code now works, so we can remove this print statement and we can continue on the next video.